Former Prime Minister Stephen Harper is in Ottawa this week, marking 20 years since his government came to power. And part of those events was the unveiling of his official portrait. Former and current members of Parliament, premiers and other dignitaries gathered for the unveiling. And in a not-so-subtle nod to Canada-US relations, as well as Canadian partisanship, Harper made a call for solidarity. Well, JP Tasker is watching the event, joins us now from Ottawa. And JP, let's start with how the former Prime Minister finished his speech, perhaps the strongest comments about national unity.
Yeah, former Prime Minister Stephen Harper is calling for unity in the face of two potentially existential threats to our sovereignty. Of course, the Imperial President to our south, but also separatist agitators in Alberta and Quebec. He's asking the two major parties in this country, the Liberals and the Conservatives, to put their differences aside and deal with these issues that could potentially break the country apart or lose our sovereignty altogether. Let's listen to the strong remarks he made earlier today at his unveiling of his portrait on Parliament Hill. Have a listen.
I sincerely hope that mine is just one of many portraits of prime ministers from both parties that will continue to be hung here for decades and centuries to come. But that will require that in these perilous times, both parties, whatever their other differences, come together against external forces that threaten our independence and against domestic policies that threaten our unity. We all want Canada to be the true north, a true north, as strong and as free as it can be, in every way that counts, the best country in the world. Only then can we say that we have been true to this great country.
He also said that the two parties in the country really should be prepared to make any sacrifice necessary to preserve the independence and unity of this blessed land. So really, Ian, kind of leaning into the moment, acknowledging that there are dual threats to the country's very existence, a very patriotic speech at times too, you know, kind of speaking of Canadian greatness and saying how it's a country that is worth preserving. I was in the room as he was delivering those remarks, and I could see that both Prime Minister Mark Carney and Conservative leader Pierre Poilievre were sort of hanging on his every word. You could not hear anything else other than Harper's remarks, and everyone was kind of fixated on him as he was delivering something that was quite profound. And I think the Prime Minister, the former Prime Minister, was aware that what he was about to say would make some waves. On the issue of Alberta separatism, I just want to say that Harper was asked about this last night. He had a speech with he had a sit-down kind of fireside chat with former Prime Minister Jean Chrétien, and he said that he has not signed any of the petitions that are circulating in his province about Alberta separatism to try and prompt a potential referendum. And he also said he's been reassured that no other member of the federal Conservative caucus here in Ottawa has also signed a petition. So trying to say that hopefully the MPs and the party he used to lead are not on side with this sort of thing.
Yeah, it'll be very interesting to see how those comments are received across the country, but particularly in Alberta and particularly among the people who either support separatism or are unwilling to publicly say what they support. Speaking of the current Prime Minister, Mark Carney, he spoke about Harper's legacy at the event. Tell us about that.
Well, he delivered some very friendly remarks, Ian. He was praising Stephen Harper for his handling of the Great Recession, how he came to Ottawa as sort of a conviction politician, but he was also a pragmatist. He was devoted to balanced budgets, but he was willing as well to kind of sign checks and open up the purse strings and help prop up the economy as it dealt with the global financial crisis. Of course, there's a reason why Carney wants to refer to that moment, and that's because they worked hand in glove. He was the governor of the Bank of Canada, appointed by Stephen Harper, of course. But he also spoke about Harper's legacy when it comes to national unity. Have a listen to what he said about that.
Prime Minister Harper consistently understood that Canada's strength has always come from holding together a country that stretches from coast to coast to coast. He spoke directly to Western Canada's sense of contribution, the responsibility not as a region to be managed, but as a core pillar of our national project. He once said, probably more than once, he once said that in politics you take risks, and that national unity, national reconciliation are more important than any one party or any one individual.
We know that Carney has sought Mr. Harper's counsel since he's become Prime Minister. The two speak on occasion about some of these challenges, of course, that they just mentioned. So bipartisanship on display today, Ian. There are two major parties, but there's one country, and it's worth fighting for. That's the message we heard from both the former Prime Minister and the current occupant of that office.
Yeah, and this is a brand of politics a lot of us recognize for decades, right? That you can be fiercely competitive, you can have partisan differences, but you can also be civil and respectful. And we certainly saw that from both the former Prime Minister and the current Prime Minister. JP Tasker, thank you very much.
Thanks, Ian.